Roll call, please.
Carter. Cowart. Esri.
Here.
Harper. Harkey.
Here.
James. Here. Jay. Here. Kibler.
Here.
Langenheim. Here. Maxwell. Here. McGuire. Here. Michaels. Here. Mitchell. Here. Petrie.
Here.
Quisenberry. Here. Richards.
Here.
Rosales.
Here.
Schrader. Here. Schwartz. Here. Alex. Here. Bergson. Here. Kurtz.
We have a quorum present. Let's move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're going to have a reading of the notice of the meeting, please.
Notice is hereby given that a regular meeting of the County Board, Champaign County, Illinois, will convene on April 24th, 2014 at 6:30 p.m. in the Lyle Shields Meeting Room, Brookings Administrative Center, 1776 East Washington Street, Urbana, Illinois, in said county for the purposes of allowing and ordering payments of claims against the county, receiving and acting upon reports of committees and such other matters as may be brought before said meeting, which said meeting shall continue in session from day to day until the completion of said business.
Thank you very much. Can I have a motion for approval of the agenda addendum? Mr. Esri, second. Mr. Kibler. Is there any additions or corrections to the addendum or agenda? We don't have an addendum. Yeah, but yes, we do. We have an addendum. So, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. The next date and time of the next scheduled meetings, the standing committees will be, the Facilities Committee meeting will be May 6, 2014 at 6 p.m. Please note the change of time. And Environmental Land Use Committee meeting will be May the 8th, 2014 at 6:30 p.m. here at Brookings at the Shields meeting room. And thirdly, Highway and Transportation Committee meeting will be May the 9th, 2014 at 9 a.m. at the Fleet Maintenance Facility. The committee of the whole will meet Thursday, May 15th, 2014 at 6:30 p.m. That will include Finance Policy, Personnel and Appointments, Justice and Social Services. Meet here in Brookings at the Lyle Shields meeting room. The County Board then will meet regular scheduled meeting Thursday, May 22nd, 2014 at 6:30 p.m. here at the Lyle Shields meeting room. Okay, next consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
Just a moment. We need to remove the.
Okay.
We need a motion.
We need to get a motion first. So I had Mr. Kiever and Ms. Cowork. Second. So is there any additions or any changes we need to do in the, Mr. Langenheim? We'll start with ELUC.
Microphone, please.
Items A2 and A3 need to be removed from the consent agenda, the escrow, in other words, because the escrow was changed after we put it on the consent agenda. And the new version has been approved, by the way, by the state's attorney and so on, but it has to be changed, it has to be voted on.
Very well. Okay, Mr. Quisenberry, you have some items?
Yes, from the Policy, Personnel, and Appointments section, we need to remove item 4 from the consent agenda because of the death of Mr. Kirk. And I would also request that items
Item A3.
19 and 20 be pulled off of consent and put in the regular policy section to give me the opportunity to read those proclamations.
Very well. Any other items to pull, Mr. Esri?
Yes, I believe it was just a slip of the tongue. Mr. Langenheim didn't mean to pull A2, I don't believe. Just A3.
Just A3, okay.
So if that's okay
Okay, we'll
with
make the
everything,
correction.
it's
Just
just the A3.
for ELUC A3. Okay, did I see another hand? Anything else to be pulled? Sorry.
Sorry, just a clarification, isn't it A1 and 3, or is just 3?
Just 3.
All right, thank you.
Okay, any other items to be pulled? Okay, we got our technical difficulties taken care of, good. Okay, all those in favor of the consent agenda?
No, this needs to be roll call vote.
Okay, I'm sorry. Roll call, please. Approval of
Kohler?
consent.
Esri?
Yes.
Harper?
Yes.
Harkey?
Yes.
James? Jay?
Yes.
Kibler?
Yes.
Langenheim? Maxwell?
Yes.
McGuire?
Yes.
Michaels? Mitchell? Petrie?
Yes,
Quisenberry?
Yes.
Richards?
Yes.
Rosales?
Yes.
Schrader?
Yes.
Schwartz?
Yes.
Alex? Bergson?
Motion carries. Next on the agenda, we have public participation. I'll ask that you keep your comments, please, to 5 minutes. The first name I have is Robert Michael Doyle. If you would, Mr. Doyle, please turn on the mic when you get up there. You can leave it on after you're done with your comments, please. Just a button right in the center. There you go, thank you.
I don't do technology well. Okay. I'm here about the proposed proclamation designating June 2014 as Respect and Celebrate Same-Sex Marriage Month, which will be brought up and discussed in May. And I did present it at the Committee of the Whole meeting in April. Tonight, I would like to give a little history as to why this proclamations are important to me and maybe not important to hardly anyone else. In the modern gay liberation movement began June 1969, and soon after we were having pride celebrations in all the major cities. By 75 or so, when I got involved, places like Chicago were also, their mayors were issuing proclamations in celebration of gay and lesbian pride. In 79, I asked then Jeffrey Markland, Republican, mayor of Urbana, and Daniel McCollum, Democrat, mayor of Champaign, to issue a joint proclamation for a Pride Day here. They did sign it. I wrote it. They agreed to language. They signed it. I sent a copy to the News Gazette. The News Gazette ignored it. Another gay activist sent a copy to one of the local ministers who specialized in preaching hate of gay people. He immediately made sure it was publicized to all the other people who hate gay people. And so there was a big uproar. Large numbers of people were induced to call the two mayors and complain. The mayors talked to all of them, either by calling them back or talking to them as they called. After that was over with, Jeffrey Markland said, for public consumption, that if I had not thought that the proclamation was a good idea when I signed it, I now feel strongly that it is a good idea, because he became aware of the large amount of hatred and disinformation about gay people in this community. In Urbana, one council member who opposed the proclamation said, however, it was entirely the mayor's proclamation to choose to issue a proclamation or not. That ended it in Urbana at the official level. In Champaign, one or more council members wanted to take away from the mayor the right to issue proclamations. And they actually had a discussion of that at a council meeting, but then they discovered the huge number of requests for proclamations that go to the mayor on a regular basis and decided they just couldn't deal with that. And so they left things as they were. And then I continued to get pride proclamations every year up until a mayor refused to issue them. Once he was out of office, I returned to obtaining them. And 2 years ago, I obtained from you, or from this board, I should say, slightly different membership, a proclamations for celebrate and respect, or I'm sorry, respect and celebrate Civil Unions Month. Now, I'm going to, and so proclamations are important as a very inexpensive way for public authorities to recognize the concerns of minority groups and special interests within the community. People living in incorporated towns and villages in this county have someone to go to get their proclamations. People living in the rural areas of the county do not, unless you're willing to issue them. And I think you ought to be willing to provide that service to your constituents. I'm going to reread the proclamation as I had written it, the proposed proclamation. I understand that there are members who want to change the language. I am not wedded, pun intended, to this language, and am willing to negotiate about that, and will do so. And I'm willing to hear suggestions from other people in the community. Since you all have since the board members have this in their packet, you can now ignore me, but I do want to read this for the benefit of the public. Whereas traditional marriage, defined as the union of one woman and one man for life, for the purposes of mutual love and companionship, it should be, and for the procreating and raising of children, has served and continues to serve our society well. And whereas in recent times, women and men have begun forming marriages of limited duration, having children through adoption only, or planning to have no children, and sometimes solemnizing their union through civil ceremonies rather than religious. And whereas on June 2nd, 2014, marriage licenses will become available to same-sex couples in all 102 counties in Illinois. And whereas also on June 2nd, 2014, couples in Illinois joined by civil unions may, at no cost for 1 year, have their unions changed to marriages dated from the day of their civil union ceremonies. And whereas all forms of legal marriage may be beneficial to the children being raised by loving couples, as well as to all the people of Illinois. Now, therefore, it is proclaimed by the Champaign County Board that the month of June 2014 is designated as, quote, respect and celebrate same-sex marriages month in the county of Champaign, Illinois, unquote. My phone number is 217-344-0910, and that's a cell phone. You may call it any time. I'll turn it off if I get too many calls at once, but I haven't gotten any calls yet.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next name I have is Natalie, I'm going to say this wrong, Prochaska? Prochaska. That's it, I'm sorry.
Good evening. While those are going around, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Natalie Prochaska. I am currently a master's student at the University of Illinois. I am a local townie, born and raised here, been here my whole life. And I am a member of Planners Network, which is a progressive student organization that has been focusing recently on decreasing local racial disparities. I'm passing around two handouts. One is an infographic that's a summary of the most up-to-date Planners Network jail demographic tracking that we've been doing. The other is a list of selected excerpts from the ILPP jail recommendation report released last September. The specific recommendations listed by theme that I would like to emphasize for you today. I'd like to start off first by complimenting the board for taking an active interest in resolving many of the issues raised by the CUCPJ campaign over the last 2 years and devoting valuable county resources towards community-based programming efforts as local alternatives to incarceration. I'd like to encourage that the board give more time for these efforts to reach fruition before making a decision to spend additional and significant resources on any new construction projects. PN, Planners Network, has been tracking only since January, so it's somewhat incomplete, but we will continue moving forward, and I will be here again to present the most up-to-date data as we move forward. We wanted to track the effectiveness of the community-based alternatives to incarceration, so these are the first 3 months of our results. So given the incomplete data, there are two primary conclusions I would like to draw for you all in support of the ILPP reports, some of the ILPP report's specific recommendations. The first primary conclusion I'd like to focus on is that it is more financially efficient to spend money on pretrial services that decrease the overall numbers of people being housed in the jails. Things like traffic stops and other nonviolent offenses are financially more efficiently dealt with through a comprehensive pretrial services program. If you go to the excerpts handout, under the theme one, the very first thing, one of the ILPP report statements refers to the fact that many other jurisdictions have already implemented less expensive and more effective ways to handle and sanction low-risk offenders without incarceration being a strategy. The ILPP recommended reducing population levels through a new classification system, and both proposed remodeling the old jail and repurposing existing buildings as a way to serve jail population needs as well as keep local jobs. I want to make sure that these things are remembered as the board kind of moves forward in making these kinds of decisions. The second conclusion I would like to draw your attention to is to really emphasize that the issue of racial disparities in the jail population still exists. It's very evident in the data. It is not decreasing, and I want to direct your attention, if you flip over the same excerpt handout, the theme 2, racial disparities, lists a series of professionally prepared data documentation. If you don't believe my numbers, there are other people's numbers that support the exact same thing. So in bringing this racial disparity issue back to the table, I want to specifically emphasize the strong imperative that I feel that for the county board to support a community justice task force to document and research the statistical discrepancies that may underlie charging and sentencing procedures not easily seen or represented in the data that we're able to collect and that are currently being collected by what's being tracked right now. So the best way to evaluate racial bias is at the pretrial point of entry. The pretrial release decision, this is a direct quote from the ILPP report as well. The pretrial release decision is one of the earliest points in the system where significant information about the defendant is gathered that can be used to make fair and objective evaluations about risk, which are not driven by race, ethnicity, gender, or class. I would just want to encourage the board to keep these things in mind moving forward as facility committees meetings continue and move forward with RFQ proposals being approved and whatnot. So regardless of the lack of the definitive and overt ability to track racial profiling in the current data that's available, something is going on here that needs more attention. It's not going to go away by not talking about it and not addressing it. So one of the key tasks I see of the Community Justice Task Force is to have a racial justice sub-task force. Similar to what the Urbana traffic stop study has done, I think that that Urbana initiative has made really, that's very promising, and I'm very excited about the work that's being done there. I think they're going in the right direction. So I just want to encourage the board to keep this important issue at the forefront of ongoing discussions surrounding local incarceration. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Thank you. Next, we have Dorothy Vera Weiss.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Dorothy Vera Weiss, and I reside at 2103 Mills Drive in Urbana. I'm a family physician, and I worked in a county public health department in California for about 10 years before I retired. And it used to be at this time of year I would be coming to that county board asking for proclamations for Asthma Awareness Month in May or in February for the Children's Dental Health Month. And so this evening I'm coming with a different purpose. When I moved here in September, I was impressed by all the work that was being done by the county staff, the community groups, and consultants on reforming the Champaign County criminal justice system to make it both more effective and less expensive. But now I'm concerned that money will be spent very prematurely on a contract for recommending changes to the jail facilities. At the last board meeting, some of the medical issues mentioned were mentioned, which can be addressed in much better ways than through changes in jail facilities. Inmates who need CPAP machines, for instance, could use battery-powered devices if there's a problem of not having electrical outlets or not being willing to use them for some reason. Also, in my experience, individuals with tuberculosis who are a risk to the community because they won't take their medication can almost always be handled in ways that do not require restricting their movement and confining them to ensure compliance. And when they do, and I have seen this once before, alternatives to a local jail setting can be found, as is currently being done for the individual who's now in a neighboring county that does have appropriate jail facilities with negative pressure room. So that doesn't need to be something that is available in every county. These medical concerns and many others that weren't mentioned need to be considered and addressed. In addition, mental health concerns, mental health care, alternatives to pretrial incarceration practices, as was mentioned, should all be evaluated to define the actual needs before plans are considered for changes to the physical facilities at the Champaign County jails. The RFQ instructions the RFQ that was released a week or so ago, they state in item number 8 that the Champaign County, quote, reserves the right to cancel the RFQ at any time and/or to solicit and re-advertise for other statements of qualifications, end quote. I believe that it would be in the best interest of the county to exercise this option of canceling that RFQ in order to take more time to do the planning that should happen first before changes are considered to the jail facilities, so that the planning process can be focused much better on the actual needs of the county. I think that in this way you can be saving money that can be used for services. You can have a better focused study done, and recommendations for moving forward will be much more useful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, Charlotte Green.
Good evening. Do I have it on?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm Charlotte Green, and I'm a retired educator and social worker. And I'm here this evening also to comment about the request for qualifications for the firm to develop the facilities master plan. And rather than repeat what Dorothy Vera Weiss said, I just totally agree with her. I think it would be very wise just to cancel the RFQ, because I don't feel we're at the place to know what facilities we need. I'll explain that further, but first I also want to say that I'm very proud of the way that the community, the county board, the sheriff, and other criminal justice folks have worked to reduce the number of people in the county jail and to try to improve the criminal justice system. And some examples that I'm really impressed with are the notices to appear in court that the police officers have been giving out instead of arresting people, so that's significantly reduced the number of people in the jail. Also, the funding of the reentry program, I think, is a great step forward that we've needed for a long time. And also providing case management services to the jail inmates, those with mental health issues. But that being said, I think that there are other areas that we can reduce numbers of people in the jail and at the same time make the community safer. I looked back over the ILPP report, and there are many, many examples of things that we could do. One thing that the report states over and over again is that jail inmates with minor offenses do not need to be in the jail. So if we can identify people that we could find alternative programs or housing options, that would be good. Alternatives to jail are more cost-effective for these people, and sometimes we could provide treatment at the same time, which actually would prevent some of those people from returning to jail. So I thought I'd mention just a few of the different ideas that were set forth in the report. One was a sobering center. The report mentioned that on one day, I guess just the day that he looked at the jail population numbers. 14% of the jail population were in jail for disorderly conduct. And so a lot of these people were probably just drunk and needed a place to be safe overnight. And again, they wouldn't need to be in the jail. They could be in like a lower security prefab building or maybe a building that the county already owns. At that same time, while they're there, they could be offered community services that could help with their alcohol problems. Another thing he mentioned, or the report mentioned, is screening inmates for drug use. And Dr. Kalmanoff said in his report that there's a 5-minute screening that's available, and then if there's certain risk factors, they can do a more in-depth interview. And then again, those people could be put in some kind of treatment facility that's not the jail and would be more cost-effective. That might include drug testing and/or a drug treatment program. Another idea is to screen inmates for mental health issues. And again, Dr. Kalmanoff mentioned that there's a quick and easy screening tool that could be used to help identify people with mental health problems. And these would be nonviolent offenders. And then to divert those people to like a community-based program instead of putting them in jail. And I think it's well documented that people with mental health problems, when they're in jail, their problems are exacerbated. I don't know why I chose that word because it's hard to roll off the tongue. But their problems basically become worse instead of better. So treatment is always a better option. And this last one, I don't remember reading before, but I really like it. Dr. Kalmanoff mentioned that homelessness can be a criminal justice issue in that sometimes homeless people are arrested for urinating out in public, and maybe one pretty easy solution for that is just to build some public bathrooms. That would be cheaper than the jail cells. So these are just a few of the recommendations.
That's 5 minutes.
Okay. So I hope you will just take this into consideration when planning to build.
Thank you. Next, we have James Kilgore.
Good evening, James Kilgore, 602 Harding Drive. I want to speak a little bit about a concern that I have, which I kind of would refer to as a slight rewriting of the history of the last 2 years in terms of the process that's taken place. And it seems that at times where there's an implication that the last 2 years with the ILPP report and the Criminal Justice Task Force and so forth has either been kind of a waste of time or wasted resources, or alternatively that it's been kind of a detour away from the main task, which is to build, build, build. And so I think we need to realize that what took place in Champaign County over the course of the last 2 years at the authorization of the county board was a process that's parallel to what's taking place across the country in states and counties. That is a reevaluation of the way in which criminal justice operates, and an acknowledgement of the fact that incarceration has been used far too often and has become not only destructive of communities, but has spent far too much money for states and counties. So I think we need to build on that process and recognize that that there is a danger, as Mr. Alex pointed out last week, with regard to the juvenile detention center, that in the 1990s we had a lot of alarmist rhetoric about teenage super predators and so forth, and so there was a flurry to build juvenile facilities to house these super predators. And what do we find? Mr. Alex asked, what's the occupation rate of the juvenile detention center? So I looked at the quarterly report for the juvenile detention center, and with a capacity of 40, the highest daily population for the entire first quarter was 19. So we have a building that's sitting half empty, taking up massive amounts of county debt in bond repayments, and it's not being utilized. Now, I'm not encouraging the police to go out and arrest more youth. What I'm saying is that there needs to be solutions that are more flexible, that are less costly than building facilities. And I don't think the conclusion that we want out of the last 2 years is that we find that we're spending $200,000, $300,000 on programs, and we're going back to spending several $1 million on new jail facilities. We need to have some kind of a reasonable balance and acknowledge that it's time for a shift, a reallocation of resources from build to reinvestment in communities, so that we don't end up continuing the past and building facilities that are going to have no use other than to incarcerate people who shouldn't be there in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Mark Insland.
Hi, I'm Mark Enslin. I have addressed you before on issues of the jail, and that is what I wish to speak to tonight. I wanted to say a little bit about why I care and focus on particularly the aspect and expand on what Natalie talked about in relation to pretrial services, which is one component of the ILPP report. Be brief about why I care. I'm a musician, composer. I studied here, and I'm a teacher and also a proofreader as a day job. And but I also consider myself civic-minded, and that civic-mindedness comes, I think, initially from my mother telling me that she went to hear Martin Luther King speak, which would be about 50 years ago. And so ever since then, I have been trying to piece together my mother telling me that how much she admired Martin Luther King, what he said, and how we are not yet at the table of brotherhood. And part of that self-education has been getting involved in community groups, coming to meetings like this, doing community court watch, and in the time that I can squeeze out from these other activities, trying to educate myself. Part of that has involved reading this book, The New Jim Crow, which I highly recommend. From a few years ago, and it's by a civil rights lawyer who had a kind of epiphany about racial disparity in incarceration in general in the United States. And the title is a really kind of shocking title, if you think about it for a moment. It rolls off the tongue, but just to look at what the history of Jim Crow was, why was it there in the first place? It seems to be over, and now here's someone who's claiming that we have a new Jim Crow, possibly in the form of the drug war, and documenting the increase of incarceration. And also part of what I admire about this book is that it hinges on a self-criticism of the author. So she thought she was pretty good on civil rights. She's African-American herself, and at a certain point, someone confronted her, and she realized that she was not listening to people who had been incarcerated or people who had been convicted of felonies, that she needed to learn how to listen. And as a composer, I also continually am trying to learn how to listen. So I try to listen to her, recommend this. So that's part of how I care. And recently, that has meant going to YouTube and listening to the speech by Julia Reitz which was mostly focused on pretrial services following the ILPP report, kind of introduction to her office and how they work, and then giving an account of the 5 weeks that they spent trying out pretrial services as recommended in the ILPP report, and why it only lasted 5 weeks, making a rationale for that. it's worth checking out and watching. She gives some numbers, and my disappointment is that the reason that she tells in this speech for why they curtailed this experiment was that they thought you all were going to give money to pretrial services. So they, meaning State's Attorney's Office and some judges, I suppose, in order to head off allocating the taxpayers' money to pretrial services, okay, let's just, we see that we haven't really helped much. There's only one person that they identified that had their status in the jail changed as a result of these services, and so let's maybe stop. I think that's not enough. Hoping that I still have a minute or two. The ILPP report has a lot of emphasis on pretrial services. In the question of whether a new jail is needed, it was part of the emphasis from the Deputy Sheriff's report of last meeting, was looking at numbers of people in spaces, and if fewer people are going into the spaces in the first place, that will affect what's needed spatially, facilities-wise. And I think more than 5 weeks is needed for looking at the various means of pretrial risk assessment of who actually needs to go into the jail when they have interactions with the criminal justice system. The recommendations summarized are 7 points here. Seek additional technical assistance from the Pretrial Justice Institute. They have a great website, pretrial.org. Very well organized, an organization that's been in existence since the 70s, to implement a real best practice pretrial justice program. A standalone pretrial services program in the courts should be developed. Standalone.
I hate to interrupt you, but
Okay.
could you wrap it up real quick,
Okay.
please?
You can read those recommendations, and just the one point of Ms. Rietz's argument was that they already do many of the things recommended here, and so they don't really need to do a formal thing. And one last book recommendation, the Checklist Manifesto, a doctor who looks at how even experts, people who are the top of their field, make mistakes because they actually think they're too good. They are really good, but these really complex phenomena we have in our society, hospitals and jails, require sometimes formal instruments, which is the emphasis here, that will perhaps address racial disparities. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Bobby Trist.
Good evening. My name is Bobby Trist. I live at 503 North Fair in Champaign, and I've spoken to this body several times before. I want to speak on mental health and the criminal justice system in this county. There seems to be a movement to build a facility just for mental health. That's my understanding of what the RFQ is for. Well, that's whatever. There is concern that there is not enough space to isolate people who have mental health problems. A lot of people with mental health problems are worse if they're isolated. Most mentally ill people are nonviolent. They're more afraid of you than we should be of them. And when I spoke to this body last, I was concerned that we need a facility in this county where the police or anyone else can take somebody who is acting out of mental illness. Most mentally ill people do not need to be in a jail. They need to be in a safe space. And there were movements toward having this safe space, but it got a little bit derailed. There is a beginning. We need some place where people can go 24/7, not 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, because especially a lot of stuff happens after hours or in the middle of the night. So I'm concerned that more emphasis be put on what we need in this county as far as the mentally ill. One is we need to keep people out of jail in the first place, mentally ill people. And if we had a place where we could safely where they could safely be taken and not turned down, that would be a big first step. We need, of course, services for those who are in the jail, and that is partially taken care of. And then there's a very important transition for people coming out of jail who are mentally ill. But the main thing we need is a facility of beds without bars, which is how Dr. Kalmanoff put it, to provide housing and services for those who now end up in jail. And these are long-term goals, of course, but we made some little steps toward that, which I applaud, and I think we need to give ourselves more time to get these facilities in place and let us see how many people we can divert from the criminal justice system who are now there inappropriately. I'm both a professional licensed clinical social worker and have had mentally ill people in my family, and I know mentally ill people do a lot of really annoying things. And then the thing is, get this person out of here. So a lot of times, you know, somebody calls the police and says, this person is acting crazy, get him out of here. And if the only place we have to go are the emergency room, the street, or the prison, the jail, that doesn't give very, that's not a sufficient array of options. So please, please consider this again. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Danielle Chenoweth.
Good evening. My name's Danielle Chenoweth. I live at 412 West Illinois Street in Urbana. I have a voice tremor, and it goes up and down. Today's a down day, but I felt so compelled to speak on this issue that it's important that I be here and talk. I'm a business owner in town who chose Champaign, Urbana as my community, and every year I choose this community over other job offers or other places I could be. And I choose this community because of innovation. If there was one word I would use, it's innovation. And so I expect of this board, of my city council, of my hospital, of my schools, to have the same level, the same bar for innovation as the Tier 1 university here at the University of Illinois. Over the last 2 years in our conversation about jail building, I felt like we were on track to be a model community. And I spoke about this before the county board. We were looked to, and I was in conversation with a number of people across the country who are watching Champaign County and watching this board and saying, they get it. They understand that the era of mass incarceration that started in the 70s doesn't work. And they're looking for alternatives to heal our community, to put people back to work, to help people lead productive lives. My question to you tonight is, what happened last week? This RFQ, this request for qualifications, I couldn't find it on the website before you voted on it. That's totally unacceptable for a public body. And I really see it as a move that represents a guilty conscience. They're not gonna like this, we just gotta move quickly. Let's just get this RFQ done. I applaud this body for engaging with the public throughout this conversation about jail building. I think a lot of productive ideas have come to the fore because of that participation. I would like to see this board try a real pretrial services, and I don't think you have the right to move forward with ideas for building until you take that seriously. I'd like this board to admit and understand that mental health issues are not appropriate for a policing or jailing function. That is simply, the policing function is simply an intervention moment, and that mental health issues are to be addressed in a medical environment. Isolation is torture, and in particular for mental health subjects, isolation is a kind of torture. Your county jail has a history of torture with tasers, with tying people up. We need to move past that history. And so when I watched the video from the conversation I missed about the RFQ, and there was this kind of fuzzy math about, well, we have a small jail population, but see how we need more facilities because we need to isolate these people and these people and these people. I thought, what a magic trick to convince the board that they need more jail facilities, even though the population is shrinking. My question is, the nursing home, what is happening to it? It has individual units that are set up, it has beds. What is the future of the nursing home, the old nursing home that we purchased and taxpayers paid for? And how does it figure into this conversation? The JDC, Juvenile Detention Center, that the taxpayers paid for, what function is it playing in this conversation? My last request related to that is that every time you expend money on the behalf of us, the taxpayers, you have to ask the question, what is the opportunity cost? So if you purchase this study prematurely, what have you lost? Have you lost pretrial services that Ms. Reitz asked you to fund? What did you lose? Because you're not just getting something, you're losing something. And so I'd ask you, as we move forward, change the process, keep it open. Let's look at the report. Let's implement the things in the report. And then let's look at our facilities needs. And let's look at existing facilities first before we look at new facilities. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next I have, and I'm not even going to pronounce your last name. I'm sorry. I won't mess that up because I will. Nilafar? He's great, yeah. He's good at that. I'm not. Please come forward. Thank you.
Good evening, and I want to start with saying, here we go again. I didn't think that we would have to talk about the things that we had been talking about for 2 years. And people before me had eloquently talked about some details, reasons why we shouldn't do this or that, and there has been statistics and data, and I'm not here to actually do the same. Rather, I want to start by saying that institutions have a life of their own. And again and again, we have seen that they outlive their usefulness, and then they become a menace rather than being a helpful mechanism for communities, societies to resolve its problems. And to me, it seems that our criminal justice system has become one of these institutions that unless, as citizens, community members, we intervene and try to change its direction, it would actually pull us all down with itself. So I mentioned this kind of reality that we might all be familiar with as a reason why I insist to come back to this body, because I feel that we have to intervene and prevent this institution from becoming bigger and bigger, and then basically take our entire democratic system away from us. What I want to specifically speak to is the request, of course, that everyone talked about, request the board has received from the sheriff's office about a study to be done on the need for extra jail space. And I really urge you that before consenting to this, people talked about how you can retract. I want to suggest that you take the following steps. First, please carefully read the ILPP report and the task force reports. You may have already read it, but we tend to forget some details, important details. And since we have, paid over $100,000 for this report, I think it's worth our while to spend some time reading it again and take it seriously. And this is specifically important because this current request by the sheriff's office, out of context, cites ILPP's reports and its assertion that the two jails are terribly deficient in satisfying the needs of our community. And this is definitely true, and nobody has questioned that. So repeat this is basically sometimes sounds like being very disingenuous. And this request totally ignores the strong recommendations that ILPP had made to reduce the jail population and by taking drastic reforms and taking the non-violent offenders rather than to jail, but taking them away from jail and into various programs. And so that's my first recommendation, that you go over those reports. And the second is that the board needs to ask why a study involving the construction of 131 beds to be added to the already 182 beds in Satellite is at all something to be considered. It just does not make sense. It's financially irresponsible, especially since Chief Deputy Jones has also told the board last week that the number of inmates decreased in December to 209 and has since continued to decrease through February. And what are these extra beds for? Are they for locking up the mentally ill, whom we have heard their numbers have been increasing in our communities, and police has told us repeatedly that they sometimes don't have any other place to take them rather than to put them in jail. If this is the case, weren't we supposed to spend our money to care for these people in our communities? And the same is true for isolation cells that the request has been talking about. And the third basically recommendation that I have is that demand from our criminal justice system transparency, demand reports and statistics about the steps that they have taken in the direction of the reform, and what are some of the plans that they have implemented that have worked, what are those who they have tried and have not worked. And this is really important for us to do because we have seen this example that a gentleman here mentioned before, which is that these kind of studies that they do to show the efficacy or otherwise of the new program has to be done very professionally and scientifically. And it cannot be amateurishly done. like the one that
Could you
was
please
done.
wrap up? Your 5 minutes are up, please. Could you wrap?
Is up.
up?
Yeah,
Please.
yes, what I wanted to end this with is that we have to ask our officials, elected officials, to give us true studies that shows either that the programs work or not. They cannot do it by 5-week studies that relies on untrained police officers who do this kind of work on top of their full-time job, and they are probably overworked. So this is a way of basically rejecting all the reports, and we owe ourselves a better treatment and better type of reports. Thank you very much. Sorry I went over time.
Thank you. And that's all the names that have turned in for public participation. I will close participation right now. Thank you all for coming. Next on the agenda, we have communications for the board. Diane.
I would just like to send condolences to the wife of James Kirk, Vicky, and his family. Mr. Kirk passed away rather suddenly. He has served the county not only as part of the fire district and the chief of Ludlow Fire Department, but he also was a commissioner for the drainage district too. So he certainly served his county very well. And I'd just like to make that noted.
Thank you. Anyone else? Just Mr. Alex.
I'd like to make a comment. Most of you are probably aware that Monday was the 118th running of the Boston Marathon, and it's a good opportunity for politicians to be able to say how great a success story this is. You know, the year after the bombing, it was a smashing success, the first American one in many years. But I want to point out that Saturday, closer to home, is the 6th running of the Illinois Marathon here in Champaign County. Most of you are probably familiar with the event. It's the thing that closes the streets and traps you in your driveway and wreaks havoc on the bus service and the mail service and so on, mostly in Urbana, in my district, which has the first 12 miles of the course. It's an absolute pain in the butt, and I love it, and I think that you should too. The marathon inspires people in the community to train, to run, to compete, brings in thousands of people from outside Champaign County, brings in a lot of positive press for the community and a lot of revenue for local businesses. I heard today they have 21,000 entrants, including the fun run and the half marathon, the full marathon, and so forth. And finally, this is one of the few tourism draws where Champaign County's complete lack of terrain is actually an asset. This race has a reputation for strong community support, for being a fast course for obvious reasons, and I just wanted to commend this event. As you know, it was started by a private company whose business is running marathons in various cities, and it was so successful that after a couple of years, a local group bought it to make sure that it would stay here in Champaign-Urbana. And it has. So if you're volunteering, thank you. If you're running, good luck. Otherwise, please be patient. If Boston can handle one marathon a year, so can Champaign-Urbana. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else? I have a couple things that, of course, obviously you noticed Mr. Kurtz is here. And for those who are viewing or listening, Mr. Kurtz is visiting his property in Florida. Also, too, I want to make a note, Ms. Busey is taking a night off from county board activities, and we have very capable hands, Mr. Anderson here, our deputy administrator. So this is your first time. Welcome. Good luck. Okay, with that, Mr. Langenheim.
My response to the marathon is to get out of town.
It's a money-making opportunity, Mr. Mr. Langenheim. You could rent your house out and leave. Okay, let's move on to the agenda, please. And next, we have approval of minutes. March 20th, 2014. Is there a motion to approve? Mr. Quisenberry, second, Mr. Mitchell. Any additions or corrections to the minutes of the March 20th, 2014 meeting? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We'll move to standing committees. Mr. Langenheim, Environmental Land Use Committee, please.
Addition to the agenda. Thank you so much. I move to approve the revised resolution number 88 through 3 that you have at your desk.
Is there a second?
Oh, wait a minute.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Approving the proposed escrow agreement and the proposed escrow agent for the California Ridge Wind Farm.
Second.
Second, Mr. Esri. Any questions or comments?
I have a discussion comment here.
Go ahead, Mr. Langenheim.
The zoning administrator emailed all board members reviewing additional changes that had been made to the proposed escrow agreement. The zoning administrator is present tonight if any board member has questions about the changes. As stated in his memorandum, the state's attorney has approved the draft escrow agreement received April 16, 2014, and all parties are now satisfied with this proposed agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Langenheim. Any further question? Yes,
If Mr. Hall could come to the table.
certainly. Ms. Petrie, you have questions for Mr. Hall?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm just curious, what was the trigger mechanism that caused the bank to want to have these changes put in place?
Well, it's my understanding that the bank actually was brought in to review the agreement quite late, and they were not happy with all the protections they were afforded in the previous drafts. And so those were the changes that were made, and the state's attorney reviewed those and had no concerns about them.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Is that all, Mr. Langenheim from ELEC? Thank you.
That's all we have.
Thank you, sir. Next, Highway Transportation, Ms. Cowart.
The Highway and Transportation has an update and overview of the pavement management system presented by Jeff Blue.
Good evening. I'd like to take about 5 minutes. Got Bill Vavrick here with me from Applied Research Associates, who is the consultant who's been doing our pavement management services for the last 5 years. And he's going to speak a little bit after me, but I just wanted to take a few minutes because there are a few things that the Highway Committee is privy to because of the committee meetings that haven't really been talked about a lot in the county board meeting room. Couple of projects that were all very close to our hearts, the Olympian Drive and the Lincoln Avenue project. The Olympian Drive project is actually on the state letting for tomorrow. So the IDOT will be taking bids on that project. Likely that we won't know who the low bidder is for a couple of weeks after the bids are taken, because IDOT kind of keeps that locked in a box until they get everything figured out. Lincoln Avenue project, we're still in the preliminary engineering and planning phase, but if the Olympian Drive project is awarded by IDOT and we start construction this summer and finish in the summer of 2015, it's likely that the Lincoln Avenue project would move directly in behind that in year 2016. And neither one of those projects have escalated at all in cost at this time. We're hoping the Olympian Drive project actually comes in considerably less. We do have 6 bidders on that project, which is quite a pretty good list when you're talking about a project of this magnitude. And we're hoping for very competitive bids. The bidding climate is very good right now as far as projects of this nature go. Couple of quick things. You all know that we went through a pretty rough winter. Luckily, our roads out on the county system, I believe, held up pretty well. Our guys didn't hold up so well. We actually have already spent, we budgeted $50,000 for overtime, and we typically, don't even get to that amount. We already spent $73,000 this year in overtime on snow removal alone. So between that and our fuel costs And the fact that we used every last drop of salt that we had in the salt dome, it was a pretty rough winter on our budget and on our personnel, but I think our roadways came through the winter pretty well as far as the county highway system goes. Much better than what you see driving around on the potholes in Champaign and Urbana. So those are a couple of things that are going on, kind of happened in the past and looking forward into the future. I'm going to quickly take about 2 or 3 minutes here just to update you. Let me see where we're at here. If you look up on the screen there, this is some of the information that we get out of our pavement management system. And this is a map of the major projects that are planned over the next 5 years through the county highway department. Let me get that to go. There we go. Is it going to go? There we go. So we did bid the project there on Hensley Road, which is the 2014 project on Hensley Road, and then also on the Thomasboro Road. Received favorable bids for a cold-in-place recycling project on those 2 roadways. Actually, it was on the consent agenda tonight, about 7% underneath the engineer's estimate to do those 2 roadways. We've talked about the Dewey Fisher Road, which is County Road 1, going north, extension of Mattis Avenue for quite a few years. We are very, very close to getting the PDR, which is basically the jumping off point for when we can begin right-of-way negotiations on that project. It's got a lot of different pots of money between the state and the feds and us, but we are fully expecting to get through the right-of-way acquisition over the next year and then continue with construction on that project in 2015. And then continuing north up to the Dewey Elliott Road in 2016, doing some widening and some corrections of some slopes along that roadway that are very hazardous, safety issues, as well as doing a new overlay and cold-in-place recycling on that road as well. And then basically dropping back down to kind of the center of the county there on the Sydney slab and the Homer slab, looking at getting into those 2 particular roadways in 2017, 2018. So basically, since I've been here for about 9 years, as I look at this map, we've touched about every single mile of roadway that we have, whether it be a seal coat or a replacement of the old roadway or an upgrade of the old roadway. So seems like we're getting back to roads that were actually just constructed or just had something due to them right prior to when I took office here. This is the 5-year work plan, which shows all of those projects and also shows the chip seal work that we do on the roadways, something that wasn't done very regularly before we started with our pavement management system, was doing regular maintenance or chip seals and a lot of crack sealing on these roadways to try to extend the life of those roadways. You'll see the projected costs of those particular projects, as well as, you know, the amount of maintenance and chip seals that we're doing on the roadways in the 5-year work program. And this all comes out of the pavement management system that we've been working with over the last 5 years. And just not to be a downer kind of at the end here, but as you all know, over the last 6-8 years, we've had a relatively good county motor fuel tax balance. Revenues in the motor fuel tax account have dwindled over the last 3 to 5 years. Unfortunately, in 2015, you'll see the motor fuel tax allocation is projected to drop from $2,750,000 down to $2.4 million, and this is strictly due to the fact that The counties have been receiving a $100 million per year allocation from the Illinois Jobs Now bonding bill that was passed 5 years ago. We're going to get our last punch from that one here this summer, which equates to about $350,000 for Champaign County. So $2.4 million is about where our motor fuel tax allocation was 10 years ago. And if you think about how prices have gone up and construction costs have escalated, just think of fuel alone and how much it's gone up over the last 10 to 15 years. It's tough to continue to maintain our roadways with a level motor fuel tax allocation, and much worse, obviously, with one that's shrinking. If you look, and the reason I only have 3 years on this MFT balance is because they're at the bottom. At the end of 2016, we're only got about $250,000 left. And to project beyond that made me just absolutely nervous and scared. So I just wanted to show you that the motor fuel tax balance, you know, looking into the future, is we're going to be hand to mouth here in a couple of years on our roadways. So that's one of the real impetuses to doing a pavement management system, is making sure that we're using our assets properly, we're allocating the proper money to maintain them and to construct them over the life of that roadway so that we don't get any huge surprises. You know, we do bridge inspections every 2 years. Bill's company does a full-blown road inspection and pavement view and everything every 2 years on our roadways. So we're really trying to make sure that we're doing a good job of managing our assets so that our MFT account, our county bridge fund, and our county highway fund, we make sure that we know how much money we got and how much we can spend. I'm going to turn it over here to Bill, and when we're done, we're free to answer questions, but he's just going to give you a brief overview of the last 5 years with our pavement management system. See, where are you at here? Here, let me grab it.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and talk with you tonight. I want to give you a quick overview of the county's pavement management system. I gave a presentation similar to this about 5 years ago, and since many of you were not on the board then, Jeff thought it would be a good idea to come back and talk about what pavement management is and how this system helps the county really make the best use of limited resources that are there. Pavement management system started in 2006 at the time, was a desire of decreasing budgets, of scarce resources that we have to address the roads that were out there, and some consistent challenges in what the needs were in the county's road budget. It was desired to put together a plan so that we were always working from a plan that really optimized the use of the county's scarce dollars. We implemented the very first system in 2006, and in 2009, at the request of the county board, our company, Applied Research Associates, entered into a multi-year agreement with the county to continue to update that pavement management system on an annual basis. Soon we'll be coming to you seeking a continuation of that to go into the future. The reason that we wanted to implement pavement management, and I think this is a quote that Jeff actually gave us back in 2006 when things first got started, is that the goal of pavement management was to have an objective tool to inventory, to assess, and to manage the county's road network. All right, so those are the three main purposes of pavement management. So pavement management systems, or PMS, is about inventory. You can't manage what you don't measure, right? So this is about taking measurements. The first thing you have to know is what roads do we own? So we have now a good inventory of the 400 lane miles of roads that are out there, and that inventory has existed for a long time. There are variable ages, variable conditions of the county's highways, different traffic levels. And now what we do is we do a condition assessment every other year of what is not only the surface of the road, what do you look at when you see it, what type of cracking is out there, but also we run a vehicle that I'll talk about in just a moment called a rolling wheel deflectometer. It's basically a big semi that measures how much the road deflects when a truck drives on it. Because not only is it important that our roads look good and that they're smooth, which is what a lot of folks care about, but it also matters how fast they're falling apart. And if they're not structurally adequate, that certainly can lead to expenses for the county down the road. So we take that condition data, that inventory data, and we use performance models to be able to predict what the future condition of the road is going to be. And if we know the future condition of the road, and we can understand our budgets, we can then prioritize projects and use benefit cost analysis and life cycle cost analysis to do those things to the road that give us the best bang for the buck. So that allows us to update those capital plans. So you may have seen one of these two vehicles driving around Champaign County. Now, we do only drive them around every other year, but these two vehicles are housed in Champaign County. I'm a resident of Champaign County. I've lived here for over 20 years. Our company our transportation sector is headquartered here in Champaign County. We have 60 employees. So this is a local company doing work on the roads that I drive on and all of our employees drive on a regular basis. The van you see in the lower left has cameras and lasers and accelerometers and all kinds of sensors in it that look at the cracking in the road, the roughness of the road, kind of as you drive down the road, what do the bumps feel like, whether there's ruts in the wheel paths, which could cause safety problems. And it takes a video log of that, and it does it by, rather than putting people out on the road in harm's way, counting the cracks on the road where there might be an accident or an incident, and someone could get hurt, we take pictures and measure with lasers and other sensors so that we don't have to put people in harm's way. The vehicle on the right is actually a one-of-a-kind device in the world. That is it looks like a semi. It looks like just about any other semi going down the road, except that it says road test on the back of it. It lives in a garage on the west side of Champaign, and from there it literally drives around the country, around North America, measuring the road. At 55 miles an hour, that vehicle can measure 0.003 of an inch of deflection underneath the tires on the back axle of that trailer. So the road bends 0.003 of an inch underneath this back tire, and we can measure that at 55 miles an hour. This is a one-of-a-kind vehicle in the world. It's housed right here in Champaign County. It's a local technology, if you will. It's being deployed around North America, and we use it right here in the county to manage the pavements that we have. We take the pictures of the road and we count what type of cracks are there. Different cracks show up for different reasons. So some cracks are transverse, they go across the road. Some are longitudinal, they go down the road. Some are in the wheel path. There's a number of different types of distresses. What we do is we take all those different types, severities, and quantities of problems with the road, and we convert it into what's called a pavement condition index, or PCI. That's a number that ranks from 100 down to 0, with 100 being a perfectly brand new road, no problems on it, and 0 being so bad you couldn't hardly drive down it. We rate every road in the county every other year, and we develop models of what that condition is going to be over time, because we understand not only what the history has been, and we use the history of the county's performance, but we also use just engineering and physics to not understand why roads fall apart and what they do. We use that to model and predict the future. And then we look at different ways of fixing the roads. And each one of those ways of fixing the roads has a different overall cost to the county in owning those roads. So there's a couple of ways to do this. The old way that a lot of, and many agencies still use this, is an approach called worst first. It's real easy to figure out what road to fix. I find the one that's got the most complaints, the one in the worst shape, and that's the one I fix, right? So worst first is a way of dealing with your road networks. And quite frankly, it's probably the most common used around the world. And I want to show you just a quick example of the types of calculations and things that we do. If you were to go out and a road lasted, whatever its normal period of time is, and then you rehabilitate it, that rehabilitation might cost you $375,000 a mile, and the condition gets reset. But what we do in the system, the pavement management system, is that we look at a whole bunch of different ways to do things, and one of them is a preventive maintenance approach or a pavement preservation approach. So like Jeff talked about a little while ago, we'll do things like crack sealing when pavements are fairly young, very low cost. We'll do things like surface treatments, chip seals and microsurfacings, again, things that you saw in that list of projects coming up. Because what we want to do is to keep our good roads in good condition and extend their life. Those low-cost treatments extend the life of our roads by anywhere from 3 to 7 years, depending on which treatment you're doing. And eventually, you do need to do that rehabilitation. So if you look at the life cycle cost or the total cost of ownership, you know, doing that worst first, you extend the life of the road by, say, 22 years. But if you're doing preservation, if you're making investments and keeping your good roads in good condition, you end up extending the life of your roads by 45 years, actually at a lower cost. This is $360,000 of life cycle costs per mile versus $375 doing it worst first. And better yet, for the motoring public that drives down the road, follow this curve with me on the bottom. This road is in good condition at 100. It gets a little bit bad, then we make it better. It gets a little bit bad, we make it better. It's generally staying above the 75 level for nearly its entire life, only dipping below a couple of times in that 45 years, actually in that nearly 70 years of pavement life. But if you were to do it in this worst first model, you can see we fall below and we have roads in bad condition and then we reset it. The goal is to be preventive. The goal is to be proactive so that we can do the right fix to the right piece of road at the right time. And while this is washed out a little bit on the screen, the top picture is a road brand new, well-preserved, well-maintained. That same road a couple years ago, maybe not quite as good a shape. You saw the map that Jeff put up a little while ago on figuring out which roads to work on at which time. I will tell you that we started this process in 2006. And on a scale of 0 to 100, the average of Champaign County's roads in 2006 was a 70. Now, at the time, there were some that were 100 and there were some that were pretty bad. But we averaged out at 70. Because of having a management system in place, with effectively a consistent budget, we were able to improve the network average from a 70 to a 76.5. I do this work all around the country. I go out and I meet with boards like you, literally around the country on a regular basis. And I will tell you that most agencies strive to stay somewhere between 65 and 70. 75 on the high side. Very few agencies get all the way up to 80. And you can see that right now Champaign County is doing a good job. I'm going to show you a 10-year projection here in a moment at the funding levels that we have, and you'll see that we'll be able to maintain where we are by using active management, by using best practices, looking at life cycle cost. We're improving the overall average condition of Champaign County's roads. By having road care, which is the pavement management system in place, we've been able through, you know, with Jeff to help him prioritize corridors, evaluate the situations that are going on, put the right fix to the right road at the right time. We've done a number of different significant corridors where work has been done. We've been able to, because there is a management system in place, Champaign County actually has the ability to break down some barriers on funding allocation that comes from the state and the federal government. You can use some of your maintenance money to do preventive maintenance, not just leave it in strict silos of money, but you can kind of break some of those silos down and use the funds that are best able to address the county's needs. When you have a management system in place, IDOT allows more flexibility in those use of funds. It also, by having a plan in place, a detailed 5-year plan, it allows the county engineer to go out and say, well, I know 3 years from now we're going to do this project, and if we can get a little safety money or we can grab a little money from this program that's coming up, you can start building these projects together and get the right scope and get the right mix of funds and put it all together. And so having a plan allows that to happen. It also allows us to look at innovative construction techniques, things like rubblization, and as Jeff talked a little while ago about cold-in-place recycling. We're now, rather than tearing up our roads and you know, having them go to a landfill or what have you, we're recycling the old road right in place, using it as the base to build a new road. Nothing leaves the job. It's very green, and it works, and it gives us long-lasting infrastructure. So there's a lot of great things that have come out. This is the last bit of information. This is a 10-year projection of the pavement condition in Champaign County based on the management system. And this line up here is the average, so you're going off the network condition average, and you can see we're at about 75, and we're maintaining generally between 70 and 75 with the current funding streams. I know Jeff just got done talking about how that funding stream is going to be cut back. That certainly would have an impact. I talked a little while ago about using preservation as a way to move forward and how it keeps the good roads in good condition. I draw your attention to kind of the line of separation between green and yellow. Blue and green are excellent and good condition roads. Yellow, orange, and red are roads that are in fair to poor condition. And you want the demarcation between those to go down. You want to keep as many roads as you can in good condition as you're keeping your average up. And you can see that over time, we're not only keeping our average where it needs to be at industry standards, but we're decreasing the amount of roads that are in poor or fair condition. So we're being good stewards of the money that's available to the county to maintain the highways. So with that, I think we'll happily turn it over to take questions that you may have.
Very well, thank you. Ms. Petrie?
Thank you very much for the presentation. Good to see you, Bill.
Good to see you, Patsy.
I have an information question for myself. Are the rules of IDOT such that only the lowest bid can be accepted, or is there a percentage above that lowest bid possibility that can be accepted?
As far as the lowest bidder in a project or as a relation to the engineer's estimate?
No, for a project.
Yeah, it's the lowest responsible bidder. So all the bidders who bid on a project have to have certificates of qualification.
Okay.
So that makes them a responsible bidder. They have to go through a lot of rigmarole before they can even bid on anything. Once you take the bids, we've, in the past, I know we have awarded a bid to a local contractor because it was such a very minute amount of difference in the contract price. But when IDOT does something such as an Olympian Drive project, I don't believe there's any flexibility whatsoever in lowest bids. Lowest bid is lowest bid. Doesn't matter if it's a penny or $1 million. Lowest bid is lowest bid.
Okay, and it's such a large project that it can't be broken down, so some of the smaller local businesses would have a chance to bid on
Well,
it.
there's going to be, when a bidder is awarded, he's going to have many subcontractors. I mean, most of these guys that bid on projects like this, all of their smaller work gets bid out to subcontractors. And typically they have goals for disabled, business enterprises as far as how much. I'm not sure what the exact goal is on the Olympian Drive, but there are a lot of goals out there for women-owned business enterprises and stuff like that too.
All right. Then a question to both of you. You want a contract up to 2018. Money is supposedly, or by your calculations, going to be on the slim side beginning in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
So let's pretend it's 2017 and you're coming to the county board. What is the pitch on where this money is going to be coming from for the maintenance and these projects?
For which, I'm confused. Are
Well,
you talking about our contract with ARA or?
Yeah, or the maintenance that he would be projecting out for the next 10 years.
Well, obviously, when you get to a point where money becomes slimmer, it becomes actually more important to do more maintenance because you're trying to extend the life of the roadway.
Okay, I got that.
You
but
got that?
The money is,
When money gets tight, money gets tight. I mean, what Bill talked about kind of at the end of his talk was trying to look forward. And we've done a very good job, for instance, on the Dewey Fisher Road project. We have state transportation rule money, we have HSIP money, we have TARP money, and then we're matching all that with motor fuel tax money. So the farther we can look ahead and say, 4 years down the road, XYZ roadway is going to be in need of upgrading, and we can see what those upgrades are going to be needed, we can start looking for those different pots of money. The motor fuel tax fund is what it is. I mean, Unfortunately, I don't believe there's going to be a significant increase in the motor fuel tax fund. As you can see, it's actually decreasing. Less, more fuel-efficient vehicles, less driving equates to less gas tax in our pockets. So that is one of the biggest bonuses of having a pavement management system, is being able to say, okay, last year we had 2.7 million, now we got 2.4. So let's put that into the model and see how best we should utilize that 2.4 million. And maybe some of our priorities change, because we know that we're not going to be able to rebuild that 4 miles of road 4 years from now. So we may have to do more aggressive maintenance treatments on it between now and then to make sure that when we get there, it hasn't deteriorated as much as it might have.
The other thing we'll be able to bring you, Patsy, is by using the pavement management system, we'll at least allow the county board to understand the ramifications of different funding levels. When we first put this system in place in 2006, there was a desire within the county, and we were looking at, where to allocate funds and the different projects going on, what would happen at different funding levels, either higher or lower. And we'll be able to at least let you make informed decisions. It's one of the great things that a management system will allow you to do, is to understand the ramifications of the decisions you guys have to make. So if you were to look at, the available funding and whether or not it would be allocated in a different way, there's certainly at least the ability to understand the ramifications of those decisions.
Mr. Esri and Ms. Schwartz.
Yes, I've made this comment, I know, to you before, Jeff, that the amount of traveling I do in the county, it still holds true in that I would much rather, in general, travel a county 2-lane road than a state 2-lane road. So kudos to you, and thank you, Bill, for your assistance. And when I say kudos to you, Jeff, to you and your crew, your employees, and thanks to you, Bill, for your help with that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Schwartz.
Just following up on what Jeff said, actually, I think I would have preferred to see the negative numbers you would have for 2017 and 18 that you saved us. Because I think it's what you said, that basically we'll have to change I think we have 2 million or whatever you plan to spend 2015, 16, which you really can't if you're going to have negative numbers later on, because I don't think the tax base is going to go up. Not the motor fuel tax. I don't think we're going to raise property taxes to make up the difference.
Well,
So I'm assuming that we actually do need to look at these negative numbers and say, how do we change from optimal to what we actually can do?
Right.
I mean, I'm not telling you anything that you don't know. I'm just saying I probably would have preferred to see the negative and say, here's where we're going and here's what we can't do.
Well, we did get our foot in the door a little bit with the county matching tax this year, because that was down to basically zero for the last 10 or so years. So I would like, to talk about, once we get to the budget process, of continuing to build that fund in order to be able to better utilize some of the federal dollars that are out there for projects on our roadways.
Very good. Any other? I'm sorry.
I guess another way I might look at it is, how many miles are we maintaining this year, and how many miles will we be able to maintain in 2017? And what is that difference if we don't make up that revenue?
Well, if you look at roughly $50,000 a mile for a seal coat, is kind of the number that we're using with the pavement management system. $350,000 is 7 miles of preventive maintenance on a roadway. It's only about 1 mile of rehabilitation, but it's 7 miles of preventive maintenance. So you can kind of look at it that way. We got a 200-mile system. So when I say 1 mile, I mean both lanes, or I say 7 miles, I mean both lanes. So you can kind of weigh that out as a percentage of the entire system, what we're going to lose in our ability to be able to do maintenance and or construction.
Mr. Jay?
I know you're running out of money, but I was just curious, could you chip and seal our parking lots and get us up to 70 like the roads?
Can we be done now?
Take that road out of County Board 5 too.
Okay, anyone else with a comment or a question? Okay, thank you, gentlemen, appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Colbert, do you have anything else?
There's nothing else for board.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Justice and Social Services. Ms. Bergson.
I'd like to move adoption of resolution
8815, authorizing a change in the business hours for animal control. Remember, they wanted to close on Saturday. Pardon? They wanted to close on Saturdays and open an extra hour on weekdays because they don't begin to do enough business on Saturdays to pay the cost of keeping it open. Yeah.
And is there a second? Hold it, is there a second? Mr. Richards. Okay, discussion. Mr. James.
Well, I'd like to make a motion to send this back to Stephanie to have her review this and look at some other options than to close on a Saturday, as we discussed in the cow committee. I don't know if she had looked at all that, and there's been some feedback from some constituents, and I think it's worth another look. So I'd like to make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Michaels. Okay,
There's already a motion on the floor.
I know they're making an amendment to the main motion. So, Mr. Alex, for discussion of the amendment.
Point of parliamentary inquiry, is that a motion to basically defer this to the Justice Committee of the Whole again? Send this back to Justice Committee of the Whole?
Do you have a time period next month in May?
Do I?
Yes. You have to specify.
I do. During the Justice Committee meeting, which is in May on, let me look at my agenda. There you go, May 15th.
Okay.
In that case, I would speak in favor of this. I think it's clear that there is enough concern to warrant taking another look at this. I understand the need to, do a tough job with relatively limited staff, but I think we need to at least investigate the possibility of picking another day a week to close. I mentioned the DMV model. A point was made too by someone, was it you, Ms. Michaels, about holidays? That if they're closed on Saturday and Sunday and holidays, that would actually be a 3-day period for a Monday holiday. So again, it might make more sense to try to find a day in the middle of the week. After speaking out in favor of not micromanaging this department, I guess I'm guilty of trying to micromanage this department, but I would agree. I think it's probably worth taking another look at and seeing if we can reach a more mutually agreeable solution with the director.
Okay, any more comments about?
Yes, my request would be that if it is going back for reconsideration, if they would please make certain that they do get the input from these people who are expressing their concerns so that that can be lined up with what we see when it comes back in a month. Thanks.
Okay, any other comments about deferring? Okay, Mr. Alex.
I guess I would add that if indeed, I would be supportive of it in its present form, and if that's what they come back with and say that that's essentially the best option, then I would be supportive of that, but I think it's worth taking another look.
Ms. Michaels.
Along with that, part of it, I think, is I'd really like for her to look at some numbers and things. I was approached that, being in the rural area, you can't make it in by 6 o'clock if that was going to be the latest time on the original, coming from out of town. And also the 3-day weekend for not just federal, but also county holidays. Maybe they could even look at a half a day on Saturday or something. So that was my thought process behind that, and that was the comments that were made.
Okay, any other comments? All right, let's vote. All those in favor of the motion to defer to the May Committee of the Whole meeting signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, Ms. Bergson, anything else for social justice? Thank you very much. Next, we'll move to finance. Mr. Alex.
Finance moves adoption of resolution number 8816, payment of claims authorization.
Second by Mr. Harkey. Any comments or questions? All those signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Finance moves adoption of resolution number 8817, purchases not following the purchasing policy.
Is there a second? Mr. Rosales. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now on to the good stuff. Finance moves, Finance barely recommends adoption of resolution number 8818, establishing salaries of the elected official, the county board chair, and I so move.
Okay. Discussion. Seeing none? I'm sorry. Ms. Petrie?
Yes, as we are considering this amount, and I had expressed some concerns, I sent a message to Van so I could get a better handle on the costs, and I also had asked to know, to be reminded if we had set a budget line for the county board chair and any expenses that are incurred by the county board chair. I don't know if we do have that or not. Is there one, Van? You know?
The information that you got back on the expenditures, those were items in the budget.
Right, but if they're coming from the general fund, not a budget line for the county board expenses. Is that correct?
And I'm sorry, I didn't check that specifically, and we
Okay,
can get that answer
that's
for
fine.
you.
Well, I want to share with everybody here, so as they consider this, other aspects that come into play in relationship to the county board chair. I'm not going to go over the salary, which you know roughly the per diems and roughly the mileage that we all get. But then, in addition, there are been reimbursements for travel at $1,000.05, parking at $1,775, meals at $422.53, expenses at $468.99. A cell phone is basically $1,700. Conference is $1,040.32, and additional meals at $27.03. And the reason that I wanted to bring this up is in our budget discussion, now for 3 years, I have lobbied very hard that I think it's important for all of the county board members to have chances for professional development. And on occasion, I know that we have had discussions that when Mr. Blue goes to his many conferences, that he come back and share that information with us. And none of this seems to be happening. All of the funding is going in support of the chair, and we have very limited funding. So I would like to be sure that we have a conversation about this and be thinking about this as we move forward to our next budget time. This added up to quite an additional amount of money that I wasn't aware that we had put in the budget for such expenses.
Very well. Any more comments or questions? If not, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion
Aye.
carries. Motion carries. Thank you. Next.
Finance also barely recommends adoption of resolution number 8819, establishing the salaries of the elected officials, the county clerk, the sheriff, and the treasurer, and I so move.
There's second.
Could I have a
Mr.
roll
J.
call, could I have a roll call on that?
We've got a roll call. Any comments or questions? Very well. Call the roll.
Cowart? Esri?
Yes.
Harper? Yes. Harkey?
No.
James? No. Jay?
Yes.
Kibler?
Yes.
Langenheim?
Yes.
Maxwell?
No.
McGuire?
Yes.
Michaels?
Yes.
Mitchell?
Yes.
Petrie?
No.
Quisenberry?
Yes.
Richards?
No.
Rosales?
No.
Schwartz?
Yes.
Alex?
Yes.
Bergson?
No.
Schrader?
No. That's everybody. You have the total? I believe it passes. Yeah, I have 9 to 11. Is that correct? Okay.
That's what I
very well.
got.
Motion passes 9 to 11. Anything else for finance? No, sir. Thank you very much. Mr. Alex, next, policy, personnel, and appointments, Mr. Quisenberry.
Mr. Chair, policy, first of all, I want to recognize Mr. Kibler for
taking my role in that marathon session you guys had the other night. It wasn't really long for policy, but it was at the end. I understand it was a tough row. First, policy recommends adoption of resolution number 8820, authorizing the reappointment of Elizabeth Bergner Patton to the Board of Review for a term of June 1st, 2014 through May 31st, 2016, and I so move.
Is there a second, Mr. Mitchell? Any questions or comments? I just want to note that Ms. Patton is here this evening. And I know Mr. Carter always emphasized he'd like to see a face, and thank you for being here, Ms. Patton, even though he's not here, unfortunately. Thank you for being here. So is there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next.
Yes, policy recommends the adoption of resolution number 8821, authorizing the reappointment of Mark Whitsitt to the Board of Review for a term of June 1st, 2014 through May 31st, 2016, and I so move.
Second by Mr. Mitchell. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Next, policy recommends the adoption of resolution, actually, policy passed this resolution with no recommendation to the full board, number 8857, that supersedes resolution number 8306 and number 8418, on the establishment of organization, duties, rules, policies, and procedures of the Champaign County Board, and I so move.
Is there a second? Second. Mr. Hartke, discussion. Ms. Michaels.
Oops, my microphone. Sorry. On page 47, the last part of section 18D says that board members attending video or telephone conferences defined in Article 6G of the rules receive per diem payment for the meeting but shall not receive mileage. I thought that per diem was struck for telephone and video meetings. If you were not here at the meeting, you would not get paid. 47, 18D on the very end.
I believe that's what was understood, but it's showing up.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Anderson is looking.
Oh, I'm sorry, 47, 14, it's on the new section. I apologize. In this new section in the front here. In my board
You're in the
packet,
board packet, correct?
in my board packet, yes,
Right.
sir.
Page
The
47.
purple on the front, just go to page 47 at the bottom. And then there's a section called per diem, 18. D, the very last three lines in D. But not struck off the new one. So I make a motion that we put,
Make a motion to amend and to strike.
correct.
Okay, seconded by Ms. Schwartz. This is
They're not
to amend
paid.
for no per diem for video or voice conferencing. Mr. Hartke.
Point of clarity, we would need to express this, we need to say shall not receive per diem and strike but and change it to and shall not receive mileage.
Would you agree with the motion?
Absolutely, thank
And
you.
Ms. Schwartz, would you agree with that? Okay, very well. So noted. Thank you, Mr. Hartke. Mr. Kibler.
Just a clarifying point, I thought that the per diems were actually outside of the scope of this document, so the idea was to strike it completely and have a separate document that illustrates what the per diems are. So I'm totally in favor of the amendment, but I'm wondering if we are putting it in two distinct places.
I am unaware, and I cannot answer that. Mr. Quisenberry.
I don't know what you're talking about, Jeff.
Yeah, neither.
Because actually, I can recall in the policy meeting that we had with Deb, you and I, this exact change was made, so I'm not sure exactly what happened with that.
It's okay,
Okay,
I read it,
yep.
did my homework.
That was probably the last change that was made to the document. So the new clean copy was not updated to.
It was not,
reflect
it
the
was on the
revision.
revision, but it did not show up in the
That's a problem.
board packet as being revised. So,
Okay.
because it is in the board packet, it is in revision, I would assume that we will go ahead with the motion to amend.
Could Van,
To
could you
clarify
read it
that.
how it appears in the packet? To make sure that,
In the other part of the packet.
yeah.
This is the cow, what was before the cow before. And so in the per diem section, A stayed the same, B stayed the same, C was the same. The former D was struck completely, which had to deal with the chair of special committee or subcommittees. So then the new C, new D, excuse me, should read, it reads as you see in the packet that we have. And it looks like there was a problem with the track changes as this was accepted, because there
Okay.
actually should be F should read, in the absence of a quorum at a duly called meeting, those members attending the called meeting shall be entitled to per diem and mileage. And then the rest of that, starting at board members attending by video or telephone conference, the rest of that is struck in the original copy. And so
That's not even in the markup copy
Doesn't
that I
match our
have.
packet.
Would-
62.
Yeah, I'm there.
So, where is it now?
Van, I don't see any language on page 62 related to electronic attendance.
Too many copies.
Van's reading out of the committee of the whole agenda. It's like the last two pages on the agenda. It's,
So is this what,
This is what I printed out of the board packet today. Did we maybe get the wrong I mean, was there a wrong document in the packet?
you're shown in the back of the board packet.
Yeah, this is from the online copy of the board packet.
oh, I see. And
Which before may be different than the, do we have a paper copy of the board packet?
Oh, that's what, this is the markup that's the same. So what are we missing? This is what I just read that was struck.
Well, where's the stuff about electronic participation?
Yeah, I might make a suggestion here that we might want to defer this till we can get some clarification on this, because we've got different documents floating around here. We've got an agenda packets different than what Mr. Alex printed down today.
Yep.
From the website to where we're trying to get information from what we have at the cow, so.
Yep.
Mr. Herkey.
I would move that we defer this then till next month.
Committee of the whole.
Committee of the
Committee of
whole.
the whole, May Committee of the whole, very good. Mr. McGuire seconds it. Okay, any discussion? We could take all night trying to figure this out. It doesn't make any sense. Mr. J.
Yeah.
Nope.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Any other comments or questions? Ms.
Parliamentary
Petrie?
question. There's two motions on the floor that need to be removed before Mr. Harkey's can move forward.
No, it supersedes, deferred will supersede those motions, so. Any other discussion on the motion to defer to May Cow? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
This is the same as what I was reading. Yeah.
All right,
Let you
next.
proceed, Mr. Quisenberry, thank you.
Next, we'll move on to the items that moved from consent. The next one is policy recommends the adoption of resolution number 8853, a resolution approving the proclamation designating the week of May 4th as National Correctional Officer Week, and I so move.
Is there a second? Ms. Michaels, would you please read that, Mr.
Yeah,
Quisenberry?
Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, I will read an abbreviated summary of it.
Very well.
Whereas the Congress and President of the United States have designated the week of May 4th as National Correctional Officer Memorial Week, and whereas the members of the Champaign County Sheriff's Office play an essential role in the criminal justice system, And whereas the men and women of Champaign County Sheriff's Office unceasingly provide a vital public service, now therefore it is proclaimed by Champaign County Board that the county board calls upon all citizens of Champaign County and upon all patriotic, civic, and educational organizations to observe the week of May 4th through May 10th, 2014 as Correctional Officer Week with appropriate observance which all of our people may join in commemorating correctional officers past and present.
Any comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, say aye. Opposed, motion carries.
Next, policy moves adoption of resolution number 8854, a resolution approving the proclamation designating the week of May 11th as National Police Week.
Is there a second? Mr. Maxwell? You'd like to read that proclamation, sir?
Again,
please?
a more abbreviated version of it. Whereas the Congress and President of the United States have designated the week of May 11th as Peace Officers Memorial Week, and whereas the members of the Champaign County Sheriff's Office play an essential role in safeguarding the rights and freedoms of the citizens of Champaign County, and whereas the men and women of Champaign County Sheriff's Office unceasingly provide a vital public service, now therefore it is proclaimed by the Champaign County Board that the county board calls upon all citizens of Champaign County and upon all patriotic, civic, and educational organizations to observe the week of May 11th through May 17th, 2014 as Police Week with appropriate ceremonies and observances in which all our people may join in commemorating law enforcement officers past and present.
Any comments? Motion to approve, say aye. Opposed? I'm sorry. All those in favor of the motion, apologize. All those in favor, motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Sorry. You have one more. 4. Mr. Kirk. Oh, we just removed that? Correct. Okay, I'm sorry. I stand corrected. Very well. Okay, very well. Thank you. Is there any other business before the county board this evening? Ms. Petrie.
I'm not sure if this is other business or new business, but as a courtesy to the people who spoke this evening about number 8 in the RFQ, I would like to ask Mr. Anderson, is that a possibility that has any reality to it, or is that totally a moot situation?
That is entirely up to the evaluation committee and the facilities committee, whether or not to move forward with the RFQ.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other business? Any new business? Motion to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Good evening.